It is time. I am doing it in a timely fashion this year. My top 10 games of 2024. And it was a really hard list to make. It was a really hard list to rank. There were a lot of great games that I played in 2024. And I'm excited to share what my top 10 were. As usual, I should point out that I am doing this that are the top 10 games that were new to me. So they may not have come out in 2024, but they were games that I played for the first time in 2024. And so they qualified for my personal list of the top 10 favorite games that I played this year. This picture that you're seeing here and maybe a little bit to the right of your screen are going to give you some hints of what's going to be on this list. But I thought before we get into the list that I would show you a couple honorable mentions that didn't quite make the top 10, but were very close. And I enjoyed them very much. So I will do that now. I'm also going to let you know how many games that I actually played in 2024 so that you get a sense of exactly what I was choosing this list from. And as always, I would love to hear what your favorite games of the year were, what you think of this list, if you've played any of these games, if you have any questions about any of these games because you haven't played them. I love having discussions in the comments of my videos. If you've been watching me for a while, you know that. So without further ado, let's talk about the top 10 games that I played in 2024 that were my favorite, starting with honorable mention number 1. The first honorable mention for 2024 was Horse and Musket. Horse and Musket, designed by Sean Schick, published by Hollandspiel. Again, this is not a game that came out this year. Came out within the last 5 years, I believe, but this is the revised kind of base game. We looked at this as part of the games in the Age of Enlightenment series that I did, looking for, the games that I found the most fun and insightful about the battles, about the Age of Reason period and battles in that period. And I really liked Horse and Musket. It's a very simple game to play. It's based on a command point system where you are spending command points to take actions back and forth alternately with your opponent. And it's more of a system than a game, I would say. There's a lot of optional rules that you can enhance your experience to enhance the simulation value of Horse and Musket. I discovered this kind of on a whim. I was doing some research into it, and I saw some pictures on Board Game Geek of people who had picked up or who had augmented their Horse and Musket experience with minis and 3D terrain. I thought that was such a cool idea. The idea of having a board war game system that you could then essentially upgrade and pimp out with some cool components was very appealing to me, and it had a lot of positive feedback online. And I really enjoyed playing Horse and Musket. I'm going to be playing more of it at a convention with all the bells and whistles that you've seen in my videos with minis and whatnot. And it's great to just set up and play a scenario in like 45 minutes. You can play a couple of them back to back, which is really cool. And the Horse and Musket series covers the entire period, I believe, with the prequel Horse and Matchlock from the 30 Years' War all the way to the American Civil War. So each expansion kind of is a different era. Horse and Musket, Dawn of an Era. This is sort of, I think, the early 1700s. Sport of Kings brings you into the 7 Years' War. Crucible of War, this is sort of American Revolution themed, and you can go through Napoleonics and the American Civil War, and you can go as far back, like I said, as English Civil War and 30 Years' War. So there's a huge variety of time period, and it's really modular system that plays really smoothly and is a ton of fun, especially when it looks nice. Why isn't it in my top 10? I think I'm going to talk a little bit about that for each entry. Why isn't it in my top 10? I think while I do really appreciate the breadth of content and support for this game, Sean Schick has done an amazing job, and Hollandspiel has done it as well. I just think that the price is a little high for the quality of game you're getting. It is published, created by Blue Panther, so the components and graphics are sort of mid-tier instead of top-tier. I think that really detracts from the experience. I think the default counters are actually pretty ugly when it comes to playing the game, and it's only because of the game being more of a system than a game and being able to find stuff that matches the period that looks a lot better that I think the play experience is really enhanced. I don't know if I would necessarily recommend this as just the box game. So that's why it's not higher on my list, and that's why it's a runner-up. But you will see that it is not the last game from this historical era that is appearing in the top 10 list as we go forward. The second honorable mention that I wanted to talk about is Daybreak, which is a game I picked up fairly late in the year. It was on sale on Amazon. This is a game by Matt Leacock and Matteo Menapace. It's a cooperative game about solving the climate crisis on the Earth. So it's not a war game. Really by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a very, very fun game, and I'm including it here because I really loved it. I played it a bunch of times since I acquired it, and everyone I've played it with has actually really loved it. It's been a repeat hit at the table with a bunch of different gaming groups across a bunch of different varied interests. And I believe it won the Spiel des Jahres this year or last year. So I wouldn't discount this if you're looking for a pretty cool game. It reminds me a lot, I kind of jokingly call it Terraforming Earth. If you play Terraforming Mars, there's a lot of similar mechanics, and obviously by one of the designers of Pandemic, you're going to see some similarities there as well. But essentially, it is a 4-player co-op game where every player takes the role of a particular world power or several world powers, and what you're trying to do is get to a net zero or even less carbon emissions state for the globe. And so the game is tracking as you build up carbon, each nation starts with a certain amount of output. And as more carbon gets put into the atmosphere and is not sequestered, the temperature of the Earth rises, and that causes more and more of these climate tipping points to be exceeded, which have negative effects on the players. You've got 6 turns with which to solve the climate problem of too much greenhouse gases, and you're using this giant deck of cards to either synergize or create actions that will help you to reduce the amount of carbon that is being produced each turn. And there's just a huge deck of options in here, and every turn you're going to get a hand of cards, and it's fully cooperative, so you're going to work with other players to take actions to try and do what's best essentially for the planet by working together. A lot of these cards represent new technologies or policies, like for example onshore wind power, that will help to reduce the amount of carbon emissions that is going on the planet. I really like the topic of this game, and what I really like the most about what this game does is it really captures the magnitude and scale of the amount of work that has to be done to essentially stop what's going on in real life. What you're doing is building up these stacks of action. So if this is, one of your actions, you can then replace the action with a new card on top, or you can match the symbols that make some of your existing actions more powerful by tucking under the bottom. And everyone's creating these stacks of actions, and when you take these actions, you're trying to find combos that will make your actions more powerful and more efficient. So it's a really very satisfying game to play in that way, and it really shows the scale at which the world needs to decarbonize or risk severe consequences. Because at the beginning of the game, you're adding so much carbon to this temperature thing, and as the turns go by, you feel like you're going to lose. If you get to turn 6, you're never going to make it, but eventually you reach sort of a critical mass, and you're able to sequester more carbon than you're emitting, and that's sort of the beginning of the solution to the problem. So it does a good job of capturing that what's needed in real life in a game format, and it's just really good. It really looks at all aspects of the technology that's being developed in the world right now, and the types of multipliers that the world's going to need with those technologies and policies together to reduce carbon. So I think it's a great game. It's very fun. It plays in about an hour. Once you get the rules down, it's good for a lot of different gaming groups. It's got a little bit of Pandemic. It's got a little bit of Terraforming Mars. It's got some good cooperation. There's a full solo system in the game as well. And it's asymmetric because each of the countries has sort of different starting actions and a different setup state than the others. And so different players will have different challenges when you play. So all in all, Daybreak is a really quality game for me. Just missed the top 10. I think mostly the reason it's not higher is because I can see once you play it a whole bunch and knowing this deck that the replayability may not be as high as it would be from the beginning. So, you'd have to play it many, many, many times. But once you get familiar with the deck, you might sort of optimize some of the ways that you're playing the game. And it is... I won't knock it for being relatively simple because I think the simplicity is actually what makes it. It's very elegant. I wouldn't say simple. It's a very elegant design, but it is definitely one that is not going to be something that you're going to bust out every year once you played it a whole bunch. It might be something for new gamers or a family or whatever. So that's the only reason why it's not higher and didn't make it. There's just games I liked a little bit more, but I think it's a great game and well deserving of all the buzz it's been getting. Getting into the list proper, number 10 on my top 10 favorite games of 2024, Rebel Fury, Battles of the American Civil War, the Civil War Heritage Series, Volume 1. This came out mid-year, thereabouts, and I was very excited for it because it uses the same system as found in C3I Gettysburg and Waterloo campaign, but it is 6 battles of the American Civil War, Fredericksburg and Chancellorsville, Chickamauga and Chattanooga, and the Wilderness and Spotsylvania. Game designed by Mark Herman. And it is great. Every time I played this, I played 5 of the 6 scenarios in the box, and every single scenario has come down to the wire. It's really expertly balanced. The mechanics are fairly simple, so it's very accessible. And the playtime isn't that long, and even the longer scenarios are not that long. The maps are gorgeous. Here you can see the Spotsylvania and Wilderness maps, I believe. Yep. this is the Chickamauga Chattanooga maps, as you can see, but just really nicely done. Kind of has some shades of great campaigns in the American Civil War. You can see some of the units here. The game features a pretty unique activation system where units are either in move mode or combat mode, as you can see here with the illustrations. And when they close within distance to the enemy, they automatically flip over, ready for combat. And then there's a D10 kind of matrix system for combat that I have seen online has been hit or miss for some people. I actually really like it. I much prefer it to the D6 differential that we saw in Gettysburg and Waterloo campaign. But it's a fantastic package. It gives you a nice Civil War operational experience in a very short playtime with sort of minimal overhead of rules. And for that reason, it's really good to play with sort of newer wargamers or wargamers who like simpler games. But it still emphasizes a lot of the stuff that is important about Civil War campaigns, which is maneuver, positioning, picking your moment, and whatnot. And I've just had a great ton of fun with this. I think this Rebel Fury is a great intro to this system. There are at least 2 more volumes coming, and I think the series is only going to get better as more games come out, especially having seen Army of the Potomac set up at San Diego HisCon, where you've got basically a monster-sized game with 4 or 5 maps set out and only 20 counters on a side. Or thereabouts. So eminently playable, but a really epic experience. And the only reason it's not higher, let's talk about that. I think there's a little bit, because of the simplicity of the scope of the game and what it's covering, there is a little bit of gaminess sometimes in the decision-making process as you approach the end of a scenario. And the combat system can be a little bit difficult to remember, or at least figure out, in the sense of it's somewhat deterministic in some senses, and in other senses it's not. And so it's a little bit abstract. So the abstractions that the game presents are ones that will work for some people and won't work for others. They work fine for me, but they're not necessarily, I'm not getting a really crunchy experience out of this. I feel like this is much more of a casual Civil War experience. And I tend to like crunchier games. So that's probably the main reason why it's not higher. But I really do think Rebel Fury is great, and I've played it. One of the games I've played probably the most this year since that came out this year. That's number 10. Number 9 on the list is another relatively simple and elegant Civil War system. And that is the Civil War Brigade Battle Series from Worthington. Here you can see I've got Franklin on the table. Franklin was one of, I think, the most recent game to be released in this system. Came out earlier this year. I'm considering number 9 this whole system because I also played 7 Days Battle this year. I did a couple of playthroughs from that box. And I did get a chance to play Franklin face-to-face with the Spring Hill scenario, which is on the other side of this. But the reason I like this system, it is extremely, extremely simple. It is only 8 pages of rules. And those rules have been continuously developed over the last couple of years to make them sort of a little more detailed and a little more clear on some of the stuff. But in general, the games play super fast. They're very simple. Billed as an old school war game by Worthington. And most of the games come with multiple scenarios in them. So 7 Days Battles has 4 different scenarios across 2 maps. You can play them individually. You can link them together to do the entire 7 Days Battles campaign. And then Franklin, you can do the same. On the other side of this map, you've got Spring Hill, and then you can transfer the end of that into Franklin if you would like, or play them separately. Production values are top-notch. The mounted maps, really big hexes, really big counters as well. They're just a joy to play with. And the game system is really quite nice. It's all strength point based. And so, when you do fire combat, you roll on a table. I mean, the player rate is 1 sheet of 8.5 by 11 paper, and that has all the information you need to play the game. And yet you still get really great Civil War experience. So, when you take losses, you'll put a little marker under the counter to show what the strength points are at. The strength point system, really, you do feel the degradation and the attrition of battle as you're playing the game. There's some light command and control. Obviously movement and terrain is a big deal. There's also morale factor, which is all encoded into the units that have only 1 value here, which is their strength points and then the color around it, and then their command bars. And it just plays very seamlessly, very elegantly. It's a really nice design. You can get a game played in about an hour, hour and a half, depending on which scenario you're doing. And if you want bigger games in the series, Antietam and Shiloh and Gettysburg exist, and those are bigger maps, a lot more counters. So you can go the distance. Typically, I find games that are too simple, if they're repetitive, they sort of lose their fun after a while. But I have yet to play a game of this face-to-face that I have felt was dragging on, let's say, even though it is pretty simple mechanics and turn sequence, and it is repetitive. It's still fun repetitive. And so, for that reason, I put the Civil War Brigade Battle Series at number 9. It's a really nicely done series and package of games. I think Worthington is doing a great job with this series. Oftentimes, I find Worthington Worthington's games are too simple for my taste, but for whatever reason, this really hits the sweet spot for me with a brigade scale. These are brigades, I believe. Brigade scale tactical Civil War experience that's playable in one sitting. So yeah, if you haven't given these a look, I did a playthrough of Cedar Mountain, which was actually a Via Victus inclusion with their magazine, and then I did a 7 Days Battle playthrough from that box, and I played some Franklin head-to-head. So you should go check those out if you want to get a sense of what the game is all about. It's for the money and for the production quality and for the experience it provides. I really do think that Worthington has a really great Civil War series here on their hands that is not going to be too intense to learn or play with others. Number 8, moving about 150 to 200 years into the future, Littoral Commander, Indo-Pacific. I picked this up this year after seeing so much talk about it online, especially from the designer Sebastian Bay, and it just looked super fascinating to me. It is modern and near-future combat in the Indo-Pacific region from the perspective of a naval commander, essentially. Designed partly as a training tool for the U.S. Navy about the future of warfare and partly as a commercial game. This is from the Dietz Foundation. It's the first game from the Dietz Foundation I own, and they really knocked it out of the park with this one. It is, here you can see the Taiwan Strait map. It comes with 4 maps, a bunch of scenarios, and there's a bunch of scenarios online. And what's really interesting about this game, first of all, you get to roll giant handfuls of D20s. How many games do you get to do that in? It's very satisfying. But it, like I said, covers present and near future naval warfare. You've got a giant deck of PRC and U.S. Navy units that are used in the scenarios. You can create your own scenarios if you want. I mean, it's really more of a sandbox than a game, although the game system, there are rules, and it's quite nice. It's easy to play. It's not too complicated, but I think it really captures the decision-making process very well from a command perspective about sort of potential engagement. So you've got all of these different naval and infantry unit trackers. You'll use these when you play the game to track your actual counters or blocks now that they've released them on the map. And you track the health, the ammo, and supply of each of the units with little cubes on this. This game is great for team play. Some of the bigger scenarios, you can break up the task forces into different players. And so you can do 3-on-3, 4-on-4, 2-on-2. The game system is really adaptable. But the heart of the game is not so much moving the units and rolling the dice. It's all of these capability cards. You're going to enter every scenario that you play with a choice of capability cards and a certain budget to buy those capabilities. And there are just so many of these. They come in 5 different colors. And in that way, I do think the game reminds me a lot of Magic the Gathering because each color specializes in kind of a different element of warfare. And depending on the scenario you're playing and the forces you have available to you, the strategies that you can come up with in terms of what you're bringing to the engagement is going to be different. And so they're divided into 5 different colors. Red is sort of like long-range strikes and vehicle assets. Green, munitions, and logistics. Yellow is going to be sort of your like unmanned vehicles and recon and targeting. Blue is going to be like cyber defenses and cyber attacking, propaganda, stuff like that. And then purple is going to be like long range systems essentially and aircraft and whatnot. So what you choose to bring to an engagement is up to you. It's kind of like a minis game in the sense that you'll have a budget. You'll be able to buy some of these, deploy them during the game. Some of them you'll attach to units. Some of them you will have in your hand and play as a surprise. These basically drive the game. All of the rules around the cards really drive sort of the surprise, the fog of war, the different capabilities that each side has. And while you're maneuvering units around the map, you will have these capabilities to kind of drive your strategy. And it's almost endlessly replayable because of that, because you may play the same scenario 2 times in a row and come to the scenario with completely different capabilities available to you. And it will change completely how the game plays out, which I think is phenomenal. 4 different maps. We've got Taiwan Strait. We've got the Malacca Strait near Malaysia. There's one for Okinawa in Japan, and there's one for the Philippines as well. So it's different geographic regions in this part of the world. I really do like. Some people find the map ugly. I actually like the way that the map has been color coded because it actually tells you on the hex what the movement points are to move into each of those hexes. So you don't need a player aid. All of the information is communicated to you right in the visual language of the surface that you're playing on. And with the combination of different command cards, the decks are different, are asymmetric a little bit between the PRC and the U.S. Navy. So each side can bring their own unique capabilities and strengths and weaknesses to the combat. It's just a really great sandbox to play around with. And if you're noticing a theme so far with the top 10 list, it's that it's really systems that I'm gravitating towards with multiple expressions rather than potentially one single game. That will change a little bit. But yeah, Littoral Commander, if you haven't given it a shot yet, I would suggest you check it out on Vassal at the very least. I believe there's a Vassal module, and play it. Play it with a group. Try solo it. It's very easy to play. The decision space is rich, but it's not overwhelming. And the game is very well supported. There are now wooden blocks that you can purchase as an expansion to keep your units hidden. In an easier way than the counters. And there's also a Littoral Commander Baltic is going to be coming out shortly as well, which I'm very excited for because that is going to be a whole different geographic area and a whole different ball game in terms of capabilities for the two sides in that game. So Littoral Commander was a huge surprise to me, and I really like the way that it focuses your decision making and assessment about how to play well in a really repeatable and satisfying way. So number 8, I think, Littoral Commander. Number 7 from Three Crowns Games, Polar Storm, the Petsamo Kirkens operation, October 1944. This is a World War II operational chit pull game from the folks at Three Crowns, Stefan Ekstrom, Jan Larsen. Part of I would call, long-running and venerable series of World War II games. This on a topic that doesn't get covered a lot, which is the Arctic front of World War II. And features the Soviets and the Germans. I did a playthrough of this game on my channel over the summer, if you remember watching it, and it was a blast. I am such a sucker for Three Crowns chip pull World War II games. I will literally play any of these. You may recognize this system as being found in the same designers from Revolution Games, Königsberg 45, Across the Narva, and Poland Defiant, all part of the same system by the same designers. And then this system is also found in MMP's A Victory Lost, A Victory Denied, and A Victory Awaits system, as well as Traces of War and Traces of Hubris, all sort of built on the same chassis, which is a chit pull, operational scale World War II system. Now, of those three different sort of vectors, I prefer the Three Crowns Games versions. One, because I think the topics that they tackle are really interesting. Across the Narva is one of probably my favorite game in the series. But Polar Storm is, the Arctic front, like I said, it's just super fascinating. Three Crowns is now self-publishing, so their games are not found through Revolution anymore, and this is game number 7. I believe there are 2 more that have come after this. They just released a North Africa one that I'd like to pick up. And I'm also on the hunt for Starguard Solstice as well, but that one's out of print, so it's tough to find. But yeah, I will play these anytime, and they're great for solo. They are a fantastic solo game. If you're looking for a World War II X encounter game that solos really well, this system is perfect. So yeah, this game in particular is about Finland and Norway and the German pullback from Petsamo and Kirken, which is up here. The Germans are trying to evacuate their supply dumps before the Soviets reach this part of the Arctic front. Soviets are coming up in this direction, and they have to contend with the horrible terrain in the Arctic, as well as the few number of roads that allow their armored units to project force against the Germans. So the Germans are playing a delaying game, and then at some point during the game, they have to cut and run. And if you remember from my playthrough, I waited too long as the Germans to try and get out while evacuating the supply, and the Soviets are just trying to push forward. So it's a really tense game. It's a really nuanced game. I think repeated plays will be quite valuable in this game in particular, but this system in general. One thing I love about it is that every turn has a different chance for a different random event. So when you play the game even multiple times, you may have different things happen at different times. But it is a very simple rule set, really. Pull a chit, activate a formation. It's a standard odds combat table. I do think that the combat table here is the best of the three from VUCA, MMP, and Three Crowns. I think the Three Crowns combat table is actually the most has the most nuance, most gradation between results. It does actually cost you when you attack, unless you're at huge odds. Like there are chances that the attackers will take losses, which I think is really important to showcase how difficult attacking can be. And yeah, it's just a phenomenal game, phenomenal system. I will probably play another one of these next year, and it will probably be on my list for top 10. It's just, they're that good. I can't wait to get this one played face to face at some point. And then I also picked up Iskra, which is, I think number 8 in the series. And I'll probably play that for the channel as well. So, yeah, if you get a chance, you want something that's, easily playable. Solos really well, plays great face to face, has a lot of interesting, chrome, that's not too overwhelming. Three Crowns Games World War II, system is an absolute winner in my book. And that is why I made it on my top 10 list this year. Number 6, a game that is most definitely not new, but was new to me. It's been on my shelf for years, and I finally got to play it a couple times this year. Angola from MMP. This is the most recent edition. Obviously, I believe it was a Ragnar Brothers game before that, I think from the 80s. What an awesome game. I understand now why everyone loves this game. It is great. So many design choices here are so unlike anything else you're going to find in war games. I typically hate area maps, but this game does the area map thing super well. And there's just a lot of really interesting concepts happening. So first of all, it is a 2v2 team game played with 4 players about the sort of war in Angola that liberated it from Portuguese rule, I believe, the Civil War that came after that. And each side is trying to essentially make progress and capture these towns and villages on the map. Let me put it this way. The objective of the game is to win on a given turn by having more victory points than your opponents. And every turn is like a mini victory check. So where one side or the other will win a specific turn, and when you win a turn, your victory conditions get easier. So the more turns that you win, the more likely it is that the game is going to end. Unfortunately, when you win a turn, the other team gets a lot of help from sort of foreign aid coming in to help them, to prop them up against your side. So the game has a really great on-ramp because everyone starts with these crappy militia units all over the map, scattered, and it's kind of random. It reminds me of Successors in that way, because when you start the game, the places that you start with are almost completely random, and so every time you play, you're going to have a different setup than the time before. And so in one game, you might really control the eastern part of the map and have a really good lockdown on some of these victory points. In others, you might start in little pockets all over, and you've got to figure out with your teammate what you're going to do and how you're going to fix that situation. And so because of that, you start with all these little militia units, and then as you get through the first couple of turns, suddenly the other side starts to get really great assets: tanks, armored cars, airstrikes, anti-tank missiles, landmine fields, and suddenly what happens is this sort of like conflict that's mostly militia skirmishing balloons into this huge, like, heavy war across the country with all sorts of higher technology weapons systems and vehicles. And those vehicles and weapon systems increase your capabilities to fight that war. And so you're kind of in a race against the other team. You're in a race to try and win as many turns as possible, but not win by too much so that they get a lot of good stuff in the next turn to really push you back down. The other thing that this game is known for is the card play system. This is where the Levian campaign command deck mechanic was inspired. Essentially, on your turn, you're going to build a deck based on the turn. You're going to build a deck of specific command cards for your side that are going to be placed face down, and then you go around the table and you each flip one and do stuff with that unit that you flip the card over for. And so that creates all of these tense, amazing moments where you may have had a plan and your deck is in a certain order, but suddenly someone does something on the map, and when you flip a card, suddenly your plan has gone completely off the rails because you can't activate that unit anymore. That unit was attacked and destroyed, or you have a different threat you need to respond to than you thought you were going to. So there's just a lot of chaos in the game that's really fun. Collaboration with your teammates, trying to strategize around how you're going to win the game and when you're going to win the game, when you're going to pick your moments to try and make that one big turn that will get you the victory. It's just a fascinating game, really phenomenal. Both games that I played this year played out completely differently thanks to the setup and the way that the players were approaching what was going on. The different factions are slightly asymmetric, so playing one is going to be a different experience than playing another. For example, UNITA, all of their units come in down here in the Southwest African area, and they have to come on the map from the south, so they're very limited to where they can go, but they have a lot of units. The FNLA, they come in from the north, but first they have to clear out this town over here of Cabinda by marching through the jungle. So Angola, I understand why it's a classic now. It is so fun, and I can't wait to get it back to the table. The only reason I think maybe that it wasn't higher on the list is that the 5 games that are above it ranked for me, I just played more and engaged me maybe just a little bit more. They weren't as hard to get to the table. They were 2 players. But don't let that mean that I don't like Angola. It's just this year was so hard. And I had such great fun with this. Played it in San Diego at HISCON. That was a fantastic intro. And then we played it again a few weeks later. And everyone loved it. So if you get a chance to snag a copy of Angola, it shouldn't be hard to find. This is a great 4-player war game. Don't let the length fool you either. I don't think this game is as long as people online make it out to be. They say, oh, this is an all-day thing. But actually, I finished both games in probably under 6 hours or less. So it's more of a half-day game, I would say. And I can see it maybe going longer if people are being slow, or there's just sort of a turn of fortune where you kind of get locked into a stalemate. But it's fun the whole way through. It does not feel like it drags. Number 5, we come back to the cover of the game that was at the beginning of this video. 2 games, actually, from Nuts Publishing. This is their World War I operational series. I'm including both here in this position for this video because I actually played both this year, and they are part of the same family, very much so. Some 1918 Bloody Spring. This is a West Front World War I game. Italia 1917 to 1918. You saw my unboxing for this. This came out a couple months ago. Farewell to Arms. I've been waiting for this for so very long. These 2 games, I had, before I had played either of these, I had felt that Der Weltkrieg was the best operational World War I game. And I still do believe that Der Weltkrieg is very good. However, I have played the full campaign now of Somme 1918, and I'm in the middle of a full campaign of Italia 1917, which is a much bigger monster game than Somme. And I will say that my favorite World War I operational system is this system. There is a 3rd game in this series, Friedensturm, the Marne, 1918, but that was published by Hexasim quite a long time ago, 2006, I think, and has been out of print for a long time, but it is part of this family. Apparently, according to Florent and Nuts, they are going to reprint it at some point, and I really hope they do, because I would really like to play it. These games are tremendous. They are big, they are deep, they're complex, I would say, but they really capture the challenges of World War I operations in a way that I have never experienced in another war game. They're very intelligently designed. There's a really interesting combat system with, you rolled 4 dice, 4d6 when you resolve combat. 2 of those dice are for the combat results table, but 2 of those dice represent sort of like the local coordination of where the battle is happening and allow you to do things like put units into exploit mode. The defender has the chance to move units who are nearby into a more defensive position to block breakthroughs. There's just a lot of like fluidity and dynamic effects of the combat system, which is not something you would ever expect to hear about World War I, especially late World War I like this. But I think it really captures some of the historical like ways that commanders had to think about where to push, localized reserves, where to defend, that kind of stuff. What you're seeing below these 2 games is the map for Somme 1918. I'll actually move these over to the other direction. The Germans start along here in a massive line. You can see the trench line here, these brown hexes. Germans start here. They're trying to push through the Allies as you've got French down in this sector, and you've got British in this sector, and trying to split those 2 armies as they drive down this road towards Amiens, and try and take Arras up here. And it is very tense, very dramatic, and it's just a great game. I can't really get into the specifics of like the complexity. I mean, there's a lot to the game in terms of the different unit types. Some units are divisions, mostly units are divisions, but you've also got regiments that make up specific divisions. You've got Stoßtruppen and assault troops in the Italia game. You've got specific rules around air, just really a lot of interesting systems that are pretty atypical from like what you would see in a World War II game, that really reflect World War I in a way that is super well researched and plays out quite thematically. So these are not for the faint of heart. The rule books, especially in Somme, there's a lot of holes, or there are a lot of places where like there are some questions that you have to kind of use some best judgment to figure out. Italia is better, although there's a lot more rules in Italia than in Somme because it's a much bigger game. We're talking about a 7-turn campaign here. We're talking about a 34, 40-turn campaign here. 2 maps, 1 map. So the scale grows with Italia. But I would say that they're probably both about the same difficulty to play. It's just more stuff. Yeah, they've just been a revelation. I have had such a blast playing both of these. Still going on the Italia campaign, by the way. We're probably about probably 40% through the Italia campaign. I'm playing the Central Powers again. I learned a lot from my Somme experience, actually, how to attack well, how to take ground, which is obviously the big objectives for a lot of these games. And the production quality is really nice. Somme is an older title, I think from 2013 or 2012, so the production quality is not as good. Italia's production quality is fantastic. They've replaced the random event chits from this game with cards here, as you saw in my unboxing, and those work really, really well. The counters are much nicer. In general, Italia is a much nicer product. This is also available. It might be hard to get Somme 1918. But yeah, if you're interested in exploring something really meaty with some really fresh thinking and some really great historical feel and flavor, you should definitely check out Italia 1917. This is the second year in a row that a Nuts game has appeared on my top 10 list, and there's a reason for that. They're putting out some really quality product, and this one is no exception. So number 5, we've got Nuts Publishing's World War I 1918 series. Both of these played this year, both fantastic. Number 4 in my top 10 games, Tanto, Monta, The Rise of Ferdinand and Isabella, 1470 to 1516, the prequel to Here I Stand. I suspect that this one is going to be controversial to some people watching this, and there's no reason it should be. I do want to address that because this game, probably the most divisive game of the year. Personally, for me, let's talk about why I love it. Tanto Monta is a 4-player strategic game about the rise of Spain in Europe in the 15th century. The 4 players, you've got Portugal, Spain, and Aragon as one player. You've got France as another player. And then you've got the Muslim powers of Africa and the Nasrid kingdoms of southern Spain right at the end of the Reconquista. The game is very asymmetric, uses the Here I Stand and Virgin Queen CDG system. And I think, personally, if you were to ask me what the best game in that series is, I'm going to say it's Tanto Monta. Why do I say that? Well, I think that Tanto Monta has the tightest integration of the 4 players in terms of their goals, objectives, and confrontation. In Virgin Queen and Here I Stand, the 6 players, not every player is interacting with every other player, which is fine. I appreciate that about the game, but the game really slows down, especially in Here I Stand with the religious systems. The 2 religious players feel like they're playing their own separate game, and everyone at the table has to wait for them to roll a bunch of dice and can flip some markers on spaces, and a lot of what they're doing doesn't really affect the military or political situation necessarily for the rest of the players who are trying to play kind of a different game. Tanto Monta, with no religious player, with no religious rules or religious system, is a much more tightly integrated game. All 4 players are fighting each other. The Muslims have to worry about the Portuguese on the African coast, and they have to worry about the Spanish in Spain. On top of that, they're fighting 2 players right out of the gate. Portugal, they're fighting Spain, and they're fighting a proxy war in Spain with the Beltranejos, who's like an allied minor, well, they're a major power, but kind of a minor power. But they also have to worry about the Muslims. The Spanish have enemies on all sides. They're fighting 2 civil wars, one against the Castilians, one against the Beltranejos. They're trying to reconquer the Granada and drive the Nasrids out of Spain. And they've also got France on their borders, like pushing them inwards. And then France, they are fighting, sort of propping up the Castilians here and potentially fighting Spain, but they also have to worry about, they have eyes and goals on the rest of Italy and South Central Europe. And so they're pushing hard against these independent powers who then might push back as the Holy Roman Empire gets involved. I just think it's a phenomenally integrated game in terms of all of the stuff that players have to worry about and fight with for other players to get victory points. It is a victory point based system like Here I Stand in Virgin Queen, but there's so many ways to go about the victory points here. But unlike Virgin Queen, where a lot of it is like very solo oriented, like with the marriages and the artists and the scientists and so forth, here all of the stuff you're doing to get victory points is in direct opposition to another player, and that leads to a very tense, interesting game about which vector you're going to push the other players in. Yes, you can do diplomacy, and as Portugal, you do have a bit of an advantage exploring the New World or exploring the African coast, but you're doing that at the expense of stuff that's happening on the map, which is all very important. And other players can also explore in here, and then you can get into raiding people's colonies. I really like this element of the game. A lot of victory points to be had, and if you choose to contest them. You've also got the conquest of the Canary Islands, which can take focus away from Spain for what's going on the map if they want to try and seize the victory points here at the risk of weakening their continental position. The Muslim player is worried so much about getting their fleets out and doing piracy, but they don't really have the military to stand up to the Western European powers all over the map. And France, they start pretty weak, but they are trying to build up their noble houses so they can get a bigger hand of cards, and they have a ton of military units. And so when they're not engaged in foreign wars, they're going to be fighting here in Italy or fighting against the Spanish. Overall, I do think that the way that the game forces other players together is the best in the entire series, and I think it's a much more interesting scenario for playing this game. Additionally, with 4 players, you get much more of a focused decision space about who you're trying to attack and how you're going to go about doing that. The hands of cards in this game are a lot bigger, so turns take longer. One of the biggest criticisms about this game is how long it takes to play, and I would say that's probably, for me, the most major downside. Whereas I can get Here I Stand played in half a day and Virgin Queen played in a full day, playing Tanto Monta from the beginning, there are 7 turns, but if you start with the turn 1 scenario, it's going to probably take you 2 days to play. If you play the turn 4 scenario, you can get that done in about the same amount of time as you would play a game of Virgin Queen. So that's probably the biggest downside, but it also requires less players, so you may be able to get it to the table more often. I do want to talk about the absolutely toxic discourse around this game on the internet since it's come out. I don't know what it is that has pissed people off about this game, but I think it's completely unwarranted. first of all, you've got people online doing playthroughs of this game who don't understand the rules and who are not getting rules correctly, who are then acknowledging they're not getting the rules correctly and continuing to play it wrong on video. And I just don't know who that is serving to do it that way. Like, what are you trying to accomplish by doing that? There's a guy on Board Game Geek who goes into every single new thread in the Tanto Monta forums to talk about how it's a crap game and people shouldn't be wasting their time with it. And he doesn't understand how anyone can love it. And I'm like, bro, get a hobby. If you spent half as much effort as you did like shit posting on Board Game Geek about how much you hate Tanto Monta and why no one else should like it, you could have learned how to play the game and had some fun and got it to the table more. So I understand. So the biggest thing that people level at it is that the rules are bloated and unmanageable. And I actually don't find that to be the case whatsoever. Yes, there is more stuff on a power by power basis in this game than there are in any of the other games in the series. And so like coming to grips with a lot of the little things is going to take some time. I also think that the rule book does not present that information in a way that is easily findable or memorable. So it's hard to retain some of that knowledge. And I can understand that is a problem to learning the game if you can't retain the stuff as you're going through a giant thick rule book that has lots of information about specific to various powers. But in general, it's not that much more complicated than Virgin Queen. In fact, it uses a lot of the same mechanics. Like, people are like, well, the diplomacy system is so complicated, but it's the exact same as Virgin Queen. There's a lot of mechanics in here that are the exact same as Virgin Queen. So I don't really understand where the hate is coming from for Tanto Monta. As far as I'm concerned, the only person who has done a review and impressions of this game that I would actually trust as being... they've played the game enough to get it right, and who has dug into the game more than just surface level is Wise Guy History. So if you don't want to take my word for why Tanto Monta is great, you should go watch the Wise Guy History series that he did on Tanto Monta. I fully agree with what he has to say about the game. I think the... there are some negatives to sort of the amount of small rules for each power, but you have to remember that if you're being the only person that's learning the game, you're trying to learn 4 different powers, special rules all at the same time, like, it's a really hard way to learn a game. And so, most of the special rules actually occur in turns 1, 2, and 3 anyway. So if you start from the turn 4 scenario, which is what I would recommend new players for a new game, you actually cut out a lot of the small chrome rules that are tripping people up, and you can just get into the gameplay. But for my money, Tanto Monta is awesome. My number 4 game of the year. The only reason it's not higher is because the other 3 games that I played captured me just a little bit more for different reasons. But in terms of where this fits into the Here I Stand Virgin Queen series, I think Tanto Monta is actually the best game of the 3. In terms of its design and the way that it is balanced. So, yeah, Tanto Monta, number 4. Would love to hear your comments on that. I should also note really quickly that furthering my theory that what's pissing people off about this is their inability to learn how to play it, or at least retain the information, is that I have played this game 4 times this year, and I have taught new players every single time, and every single time those players have had a blast. They have loved the experience of playing it. And so, like Ardwolf says, your best experience playing a game for the first time is going to be taught by someone who knows what's going on. I made the effort to learn the game. I made some notes when I was reading the rules. I read the rules a couple times before the first game, and I have a pretty good grasp of the game now. And the rules aren't tripping me up anymore. It just takes a couple of repeated plays. And what it feels like to me is that a lot of people who have played this have only played it one time, struggled, and just gave up. And they didn't really take the time to get it right. I did that, and I have had a better time with the game each and every time I've played it, and I expect that Tanto Monta will have a much better reputation as time goes on, as it gets played more, because for whatever reason, the first impressions of the game, people are getting really mad about it. All right, now we're into the top 3. And it was really hard to rank these. I feel like any of these could be number 1 on any given day. But I had to make a decision, and this is what I'm feeling right now. So number 3, 1812, Napoleon's Fateful March from VUCA Simulations. This came out mid-year. Boy, what a game. Probably has the best cover, actually, of any of the games on this list. Probably my favorite cover of Napoleon watching Moscow burn in the winter. So this is a strategic/operational game about Napoleon's invasion of Russia. Here we can see the gorgeous map. And it is a point-to-point hidden orders game. So if you've played the Game of Thrones board game, think a 2-player version of that with hidden orders. and it's about Napoleon trying to get to Moscow and the Russians trying to stop him. It is a phenomenally produced game. You have these screens with the historical artwork for each of the commanders. You've got really nice cards, which I don't have with me right now. They're in the other room, but it is a simply stunning production from VUCA Simulations. And what I really love about this game is the elegance of the design. It captures so much of the challenge that Napoleon faced trying to march across this vast distance to get to the capital of Russia, and all of the things that conspired against him. Not only do you have hostile Russians trying to make things hard for you, but you've got the weather and the territory itself actively attriting your army. I played this a couple times. I'm about to play it again later this week, and every time I played it has been super thrilling. Napoleon starts his army here on the eastern side of the map, and they're going to slowly march. The big thing about this game is that the bigger your army, the more attrition they're going to take at the end of the turn, depending on what season you're in. Obviously, the game starts in summer, in June, July, August, and September. But once we get to October and November, new cards get added, and the effects of attrition get so much worse. The longer an army stays in a specific spot, the more the forage starts to reduce and the more attrition they're going to take. And so Napoleon's challenge is, while he has this massive army, they cannot stay in one place for very long, and they have to split up and try and diminish the effects of the supply situation they are facing, while at the same time attacking the Russians and pushing them out of these key locations that give victory points. The Russians, much smaller army, much more dispersed across the landscape, but they have some tricks. The orders are asymmetric for each side. So the French are typically better at moving and foraging. The Russians are typically better at like raiding and evading. And the Russians are essentially trying to use the ground against the French by building up attrition in a spot, pulling back. They don't really want to be in a fist fight with the French because the army's never going to hold up. At some point during the game, the French are going to overstretch. In one of the games that I played, you can go back and watch the video. I believe... I'm sorry, I've got the map upside down. The French are coming from this direction. This is the west side of the map. French are coming from this direction and heading towards Moscow, which is up here. In my game, we got the French basically on the doorstep of Moscow, but Kutuzov had a pretty big army there, and the French were basically out of manpower, and at that point, the Grande Armée was in real trouble because some Cossacks had raided behind and cut their supply lines. The challenges for both players feel immense. And the strategies that you can employ to play the game are quite varied based on where you decide to go and what cards you play, because there's a huge deck of cards for each side, and you'll draw different ones probably in the game each time you play. Using those cards for orders versus using them for their event is always a critical, gut-wrenching choice, because the more orders you have, the more stuff you can do on the map, right? The more orders blocks you get to do things, but then the less effects you have, special effects that you'll have, or the less reinforcements you'll have. So both sides feel like they are losing for most of the game, and that typically is the sign of a really well-designed game. I don't know what more I can say about this. This is, to me, a classic. I think probably one of the best games on this topic. I haven't played them all. There are a couple more that I'd like to play, but certainly the best one that I have played so far. I would recommend, if you like Napoleonic games, even if you're like a tactical Napoleonic guy, this game really captures the feel of the campaign level of what it was like to try and invade Russia in a way that I haven't really seen other games do, and for that reason alone, it's worth checking out. This is one that I think will be infinitely replayable for me. Like, I would play this almost any time. Both sides play so differently that you really you can get good with one side and then face a completely different sort of view of what's going on when you play the other side. So yeah, number 3 of the year, Brian Asklov's 1812, Napoleon's Fateful March. I'm so happy he's actually doing a series out of this. There's going to be one about the 1813 campaign that should be quite interesting. Sky's the limit, I think, for where this could go. Number 2, we go back to the 18th century with Battles from the Age of Reason from Clash of Arms Games. The reason I've got these two here, these specific games, is because these are the 2 games that I played scenarios out of, played battles out of. What a revelation this series was to me. For the longest time, I was intimidated to try and learn it, and now that I've learned it, I can't get enough. As you can tell by the channel recently, I've been doing nothing but playing Bar. It has captured me in a way that I did not expect. It is superb. The learning curve is high. The detail is a lot. But I think it is probably one of my favorite tactical systems, if not maybe my favorite tactical system, regardless of era. I am having so much fun with the way that this game plays out. There's a lot of dice rolling, there's a lot of morale checking, there's a lot of procedures to the game, but the stories that the games tell are just so compelling. That's why I think I can't get enough, and why I played Mel twice back to back, why I played Malvitz and Katusic so close together. I'm already looking at how I'm going to schedule in some of the bigger games in the series. So, as you know, I did a playthrough of Malvitz to learn the scenario. I then played the Battle of Mel from the Fontenoy box to show you what a smaller learning scenario might look like. And here below this, we've got the Battle of Katusic, which is also in this box, which I am playing face-to-face right now and should have an after-action report on the channel when we complete that next week. But just a superb tactical system. It might be actually not only my favorite tactical system, but it might also be up there as one of my favorite hex and counter systems. Previously, Great Campaigns of the American Civil War is really, I think, my favorite hex and counter system, and I'm not sure I'm ready to give that crown up for that system, but this has really come close and has really impressed me. First of all, Clash of Arms production values, as we see the town of Katusic here, the maps are just stunningly gorgeous. The counters are also just stunningly gorgeous. When it's set up on the table, it is just stunningly gorgeous. It's really hard to look away from these games, and part of the joy of playing them comes with just how beautiful the game is. But the game system itself is really rock solid and really captures the nuances, I've used that word a lot in this video, of 18th century warfare, especially in Europe. There's battalion scale, so it's pretty zoomed in, but you do get a sense of why linear formations were king, based on all the negative things that can happen to you when you get out of linear formation. How cavalry was used. It was not the hammer blow that you would find in different eras. It was much more of a glass cannon, one shot, like, let's try and push our advantage. And yeah, just everything about the system is so thoughtful and really well crafted. And that's why Battles of the Age of Reason, the series, the system, is my number 2 pick of the year. I'm so happy I finally got around to doing it. This is the perfect box to start with if you want to get into the system. It's out of print, but it's probably still able to be acquired quite easily and not for too expensive. It comes with 2 battles. Malvitz, much better as a learning scenario in some senses than Katusic. It's smaller, but it's also got some additional considerations around weather, like the snow really slows everything down, so it's a little bit more plodding. Katusic, much more wide open, but much bigger unit volume, and so there's a lot more going on there. Both of them mix in cavalry and infantry and artillery equally, so you can get a sense of all of the rules of the game. And yeah, it's just, I don't know what to say that I haven't already said in my other videos. Bar has been so much fun to play at the end of this year, and I plan to make this sort of one of my lifestyle games. This, GCACW, OCS, they all kind of fall into that same category for me, which is like I will keep coming back to them over and over for probably as long as I live because they're so enjoyable. And yeah, it's learning it with a friend has also been nice too, because now I know I have someone to play with. Looking to maybe get some convention play of this in 2025, this system. So yeah, number 2, Battles from the Age of Reason by Clash of Arms Games. I love it. I can't necessarily recommend it to everyone because it is complex and pretty large and involved, but if you're interested in the history here, then you should definitely check it out. My number 1 game of the year. Maybe a surprise to some of you because I haven't done a ton of coverage of it on the channel. Matthias Kramer's Weimar, The Fight for Democracy, is the Capstone Games edition. It technically came out at the end of 2023, I think, but I played it many times in 2024. It is superb. A game that has really stayed with me, and every time that I've played it has offered up something new and interesting. It is, I feel, a great example of why Matthias Kramer is a genius and his design sensibilities. It is huge. First of all, the production values. I mean, this map, this board is massive. The amount of wooden pieces that come in the game for everything that didn't need to be wood, where other games would have made cardboard counters or whatever, everything is custom wood. So it's quite an expensive game. There's a second printing of this coming out shortly from, I believe, the Resurrected Mayfair games is what's going on there. But yeah, this game is just superb. So it's a 4-player asymmetric card-driven game. Each player is playing one of the 4 political parties in Germany at the end of World War I. The map art, obviously, is quite beautiful. Everything is really beautiful about this game, really well produced. You've got a map of Germany here, the different cities in Germany during this time. It plays over 6 turns. And in each of those 6 turns, the players are going to be playing cards for either their events or their operations points to use to either do the event or use one of their sort of various asymmetric actions that they can take, kind of like coin, actually. And based on those actions, they will get different presence on the map. The game starts with 2 players in government power, the SPD and Zentrum. And every turn, you're going to reassess based on who's in parliament here. You're going to get seats in parliament, each of the 4 parties, which government coalition is going to form. Sometimes it'll be the communists and the SPD. Sometimes it'll be Zentrum and the far-right DNVP. And that will switch throughout the game. And being in government versus not being in government sort of changes the way that you want to try and win. If you're in government, you're trying to keep the Weimar Republic stable and win victory points. And if you can make it to the end of the game, turn 6, then whoever has the most victory points wins. And if you've been in government majority of the time, you're probably going to have the most points. The anti-government players, which starts the game as the DMVP and the KPD, they are trying to rabble-rouse. They're trying to establish their sort of militias or military political power in parts of Germany. By rabble-rousing, by causing riots and doing all sorts of other things. So where the game is really smart is that there's multiple vectors to victory. There's multiple strategic approaches. At the end of every turn, you've got this sort of sequence of things that will change the state of the game or potentially reward or punish players based on how well they're doing. You've got 3 minor political parties that give sort of rotating special abilities to whoever controls them. And then what I like the most about this game is that this track here is the debate system from Churchill. So if you've ever played Churchill, you know that you're going to get issues, which are here, and those issues are going to go into the center. And then based on when you play your cards, you can argue for those issues towards your point of view, and these issues will have different impacts on the game board. So all sides are trying to win these issues every turn, in addition to having presence on the map, in addition to trying to win seats in parliament. And some of the players are worried about the economy and the international relations that Germany has. The non-government players are trying to collapse the country essentially into their version of what they want it to be before turn 6. The government players are trying to hold it together. It's a very tense game. It usually comes down to some very pivotal moments. There's combat in the game that's sort of abstract, and there's a political element to it. The card play is really what's most interesting here. You're always going to draw cards from a common deck, but then you're going to also draw cards from your own specific deck. So you get a little bit of everything every turn about sort of like what you can do and what events are going to take place. It is one of the most compelling games I have played in quite a long time. To me, the historical sort of commentary from the designer is actually what's most interesting. So starting in the final era of the game, which is turn 5 and 6, that's when the Nazis enter the game, and suddenly everyone's hand of cards has these amazing events that are insanely powerful, that break so many of sort of the pre notions of how the game is going to be balanced and function. But in order to use those events, you have to give Nazis a seat at the table in parliament. And every player can lose the game if the Nazis take control of parliament and dissolve the Weimar Republic, which is what happened historically. The sort of uncomfortableness of that is really striking when you've got a really great card and you want to win the game, but you know that you've got to give Nazis power. Given where we are now in history and looking back and knowing what they did and the atrocities they committed, it is quite a challenging moment, I feel, as far as games go and historical commentary goes. And I think that's the greatest achievement of this game, is the way that its thesis and the way that it presents sort of the history and sort of the decision space that these different political actors in the Weimar Republic had at the time, what they were confronted with. Your opponents for most of the game are the other players, and you're trying to get a leverage over them and a leg up and try and, win the game by putting them down. And suddenly you're given this tantalizing, tempting cards that will absolutely hammer the other players, at the same time of risk of you losing the country, of losing the game. And sort of that decision space is, something that politicians in the Weimar Republic really had to confront. And obviously a lot of them chose wrong, as it turns out. So the game is, as a commentary, is very interesting in that respect. And I just think that, for a topic about mid-20th century German politics, there's just such amazing stuff going on here. I taught this game to 12 people at SD HisCon. We played 3 parallel games side by side, and it was really fun to look across at other tables and see how their game had diverged from our game, and see what different choices people were making or what cards were being played at what times and how they were going about trying to tackle some of the challenges of playing the game. So yeah, it's really replayable. Everyone I've played it with has loved it. In fact, at SD HistCon, after we played that 3 parallel game, 4 of the players from across the 3 games convened the next day and played another game of this. If you have not played this, I highly, highly recommend it. If you can find some 3 other players to get to the table or who own it, or at a local game club or at a game store or whatever, this is the best game of the year, and I think it's probably one of the best games I played in the last 3 or 4 years. It is so rich. Without being overburdened. It is so compelling historically, even though it's tackling a subject that I think most people in America know nothing about for the most part. And it is, I think Matthias Kramer is probably his best design. I think that everything he's done here is so brilliant. And that is why Weimar, the Fight for Democracy, is my favorite game of 2024. I'm so happy I own this. I'm so happy it's getting a second printing so more people can play it. It is a classic, and it will be one that I will be playing for a long time. So that is it. That is my top 10 favorite games. As always, I'm curious to know your thoughts about what I've chosen here, games that you've played this year that I maybe have not, or your favorite list, or even games that were on this list that you've played and what your thoughts on them were. Thanks so much for watching and supporting the channel in 2024. I'm going to continue doing it, maybe not as regularly as I once did, but certainly there will be content at a pretty normal clip for 2025, and I'm playing a lot of games right now, so you'll probably see a lot more after action reports as well. And yeah, just appreciate all the engagement that everyone gives and the conversations that people are willing to have online with someone they don't know about games, and as we share the hobby across the internet. So yeah, Happy New Year, and thanks for watching.